going to have to be from the bottom up. It's going to have to be grassroots. It's going to have to be us here, you there, all doing whatever we can do in any way we can, even if it's a small thing. Talk to somebody, relatives abroad, talk to your relative in New York, explain to them how things are now. Because a lot of people don't realise how Ireland has changed. They still think it's the Ireland of the 70s and the 80s. It's not. We know that because we live here. But a lot of people who have moved abroad over the years don't realise it. So every one of us in this room can do something. Even if it's just talking or having a conversation and bringing the topic up and explaining it to people. Now, I was born into an Ireland of just under 4 million people. And it had been that way for quite a while, and it stayed that way for quite a while. And I never remember it feeling empty. I never remember going outside my front door or front gate and thinking, God, where's all the people? It's a bit empty around here. Not much going on. Tumbleweeds going down the street. None of that. Wasn't like that. It was a lovely place, wonderful place. We now have 5.5 million people here. And I think it's higher. I can't prove it, but I suspect they're not even telling us the truth about that. Now, that's with a birth rate, last time I checked, of about 1.4 for native Irish people. So you don't have to be an economics wizard to understand how we got to 5.5 million. The question is, what's going on there? Is it working out as intended, if there even was an intention? I think it's chaotic, and I don't think chaos is a good way to run a country. But I want to put it to each of my fellow panelists. What is going on with this seeming attempt to artificially pump up the population of this country by any means necessary? Louise, we seem to be a runaway train as regards growing population, even though as a people we're not having any kids. What's your thoughts on that?
I suppose it's a massive effort to dilute our culture, to subvert our culture, to subvert our beliefs. And I think, again, obviously everything that I say is shaped through my faith, Catholicism. And I think that you'll see Catholicism come more and more under attack now. And I think if you look back, RTE did a great number on this country, because a lot of the hatred for Catholicism came from RTE. And that was the first great psyop that they pulled off. And a lot of people still don't understand how deeply that has affected the Irish nation. What they want us to do is divert back into hatred. They want us to hate those people, the immigrants who are coming in. They want us to show that hatred. And I say resist at all costs. Resist what they want you to do, because you're falling into their trap. And that's not the way.
John, you have the same issue in the UK as we have here.
Of course.
You have a big immigration situation, both legal and illegal. Many people, if not most people, are not on board with it. The regime aren't listening.
No.
Does that remind anybody here of anything? What is going on, John?
Right. The reason for all this mass immigration of non-whites into Europe in general, specifically the UK and Ireland, is something called the Kalergi Plan. Now, the Kalergi Plan, for those who are not aware, was actually formulated in 1924 by a gentleman, and I use that term very loosely, by the name of Richard Coudenhove Kalergi, and he was of the Jewish persuasion, okay? And what his idea was, and it was quickly taken up by the powers that be, or the powers that shouldn't be, as I like to call them, it was to flood Europe over a long period of time, and we're seeing the kind of the end game now, or almost the end game now. In the UK, most of the immigrants are young, single men. No. Not families, which, you would expect that to be the case from all these deprived countries, ridden with war and famine and poverty. It's absolutely nothing to do with war and famine and poverty. They're here to replace us. And I'm sorry if that upsets anyone, but I can only speak as I find. My research tells me this. And that is the top and bottom of immigration, as I see it.
Is there a solution to this problem?
Again, it's an information war, isn't it? We can't fight them. We can't fight them. We don't have the manpower or the woman power to actually physically fight them. We need to tell everyone that we can in whatever tiny way that we can. As I said, I write books. Everybody, no matter how small, has a part to play. If we want to reach the 100th monkey syndrome, it's about information, and it's about making that information effective and passing it on. I know it's a very, very hard thing to do, because I'm sure you've all experienced, ridicule from family and friends, and people outside your friends and family group as well, as I have. I've been doing this for 30 years. So, it's not an easy thing to do, but I would say that is the only way that we're ever going to succeed.
What we hear again and again and again, and this plays to your specialties, is this oft-trotted out line, international obligations. We'd love to sort it out, but we just can't. What if, by some manner or means, a real leader was to emerge? A real government. Imagine. I know, it's hard, isn't it? A government that actually was on the side of you and I, on the side of the ordinary Irish person. If by some manner or means a leader, a government emerged like that, could they just do what has to be done and tear up this international obligation farce?
First of all, Ireland does have international obligations, obviously, in respect of any treaties or protocols they've signed, such as the Geneva Conventions, such as the EU, such as EU law, etc. That is true, but there is no doubt about it that there was a period of time when the excuse trotted out by a number of government ministers when they didn't want to deal with any awkward questions was, we have international obligations, and a few smart journalists started asking them for details of the international obligations. They couldn't give them the answers, so they stopped doing that. They stopped with that trick. So they don't rely on it anymore, but certainly we do have obligations. And some of them are relevant to the migration crisis, like the Geneva Protocols and the Geneva Convention on refugees. We need to look at that. It was written for a different time. We've also had, and if we're talking about the subject of migration, I mean, one could spend hours talking about this. It's such a vast topic, but something I need to say to follow up on what John has said. You can go back to the Coudenhove Kalergi Plan, or you can go back to the Protocols of the Elders of Zion and all the rest of it, and you can point to the destruction of the Christian West, which was proclaimed and declared by, dark forces a long time ago, and that certainly is happening today. But we don't need to go back that far, because what many people don't realise is that their own government actually made plans as far back as 2015. One of those plans was Project 2040 Ireland, and it was a vision for the purpose of which was to enable all parts of Ireland, whether rural or urban, to successfully accommodate growth and change. So they knew that this was coming down the line, and the essence of this was that they wanted to have 8 million people, both north and south, by 2040, and 10 million people in Ireland, north and south, by 2050. And at the rate we're going to reach those figures even before those dates. It was essentially a Fine Gael plan. Simon Coveney and Leo Varadkar were two of the main architects of it. So people need to know this, because they've kept this information from you. And yes, we're in an information war, and that's why it's crucial that people gain knowledge and have knowledge and know and understand what's going on, because knowledge is power. When you know the truth about what's going on, that in itself is extremely empowering. If you rely on the 100th monkey principle, just knowing the truth, understanding it, gives you power, which helps to overcome this. So that's why always, whenever I'm at any meetings, I try to give people information and facts so that they can use them to navigate what's going on, because the mainstream media will never, ever tell you the truth. It's always propaganda, and that's why you have to rely on people like myself and the others on this platform. There was a recent ruling of the European Court of Justice to which we are bound. It was in response to a question asked by the High Court, where basically this European Court has said that Ireland has obligations to provide accommodation for asylum seekers, and if Ireland doesn't, that Ireland can be sued for compensation. So this is really, really serious. There is no appeal against this. This is it. So what they've done is they've set out the plan for all these people coming in. So we have legal migration, we have illegal migration. Most of us know about the illegal migration, and I'm sure there's lots to be said about that, but you know enough about that already. Much of the legal migration, which is where the state are handing out visas and work permits like confetti at a wedding. And many of these people are coming in on DEI programs by big multinationals. That's diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. And as a consequence, the native Irish people are losing out, and our young people are having to go abroad to work. It's outrageous. And then these people are coming in and they're outbidding our young people for houses. And they can't buy houses. So they can't buy houses, they can't work, they have to leave. And in the meantime, these people are coming in. Our birth rates have declined. We've excess deaths running at 23%. Abortions were at 10,000 a year. They're at 10,000 a year at the moment. We will be replaced sooner than we think. It's a really serious problem, and we're going to end up being a minority in our country because of our obligations. And last year, as some of you will know, I ran on the platform of sovereignty when I ran in the European elections, and I urged everybody to get their TDs to vote against the EU Migration Pact, because this is so serious. One of the legislative measures of that pact will mean that we will give authority for unelected bureaucrats in Brussels to bring, relocated asylum seekers to Ireland. We won't have any control over the numbers. If we don't bring them in, we will have to pay a sum of €20,000 per asylum seeker in perpetuity. We have lost control of our borders. We no longer have sovereignty when it comes to inward migration. We have the government supporting legal migration, and we have the government doing nothing to stop the illegal migration. They could easily stop it by having detention centres, by using the Immigration Act, by closing our borders. They could have stopped it by not voting in the EU Asylum and Migration Pact, but they did none of that. Why? Because they have a plan. That's the reason. They've set the systems in place effectively where they've got the numbers. They've planned for the numbers. They've created the circumstance for the numbers because they haven't utilised the existing laws to act as a deterrent. They could easily have done that if they'd set up detention centres under the reception directive, if they had applied the law in which they were supposed to. This would all have acted as a deterrent for international protection applicants, but they've done the exact opposite, because it's clear to me they want them to come in, because this will destabilise our country, because multiculturalism does not work. And there are many studies which prove this. We're talking here about numbers. We're not talking about individuals. Every single person in this room, myself included, has friends who are non-nationals, who are a great addition to this country, love being here, appreciate Ireland, want to integrate, delighted to be here. We're not talking about those people, but we're talking about the numbers that are coming in. They're unvetted. Nobody knows where they're from. And so this is a problem for people, and it's causing a great deal of confusion, and also it's disrupting the social cohesion of the country, which is really unacceptable. But now you have a problem, so they're coming in numbers. There is insufficient housing to take care of these people. So where are they going to get the housing? Well, they now have the IPAS centres, and they have effectively abandoned the planning laws by creating these IPAS centres, which no longer have to comply with the planning regulations. They're exempted developments. So that's the first thing. And interestingly, they want to bring in proposals for legislation to mean that it will not be possible, essentially, to object to any of these IPAS centres. I want to quote something that this young TD said when he was moving his application to bring in this legislation, which is now past the first stage and is on to the second stage. It should be put on the record that the compulsory acquisition of land is a sensitive issue. It is not always pleasant when people are moved involuntarily from their homes or required to sell their lands. Although we need a streamlined and cost-effective CPO system, that's compulsory purchase order, these landowners are entitled to clarity, transparency and fairness. In other words, you're entitled to know why you're being removed from your property. So this bill provides that and strikes the balance needed to make CPOs work. So this is touted as something that will be used in respect of vacant properties only, but what does that statement by that young TD tell you?
They're coming after your homes.